And they showed up, and I knew they were coming. I just knew. So I'm taking pictures, and this guy says to me, the taller one, he says, he heard me, he says, "You can't take pictures of us, we're undercover." So I said, "You're trespassing, and yes, I can take pictures, and no, you don't get my camera." Well, they interrogated. I wouldn't let them in the house. I decided to do the interrogation with them. It was intimidation, pure and simple. And I put the lead officer in my metal chair. It was February. And I sat in the wooden chair, and I offered tea, and honey, and Kleenex, because his nose was running, and blankets. So anybody who gets fracked, I recommend you buy a metal chair. If this contamination is natural, why did they send the RCMP? Why? Natural contamination? They wouldn't waste good taxpayers' money trying to intimidate some me that has a personality going down the tubes. I already went through a lot of this stuff. By the way, the contamination in Wyoming, another in Canada mess, the EPA is posting all their investigation data, all of it, for free on the internet. Because men have discovered it is far more convenient to adulterate the truth than to refine themselves. I think Albertans have a lot of refining to do. I have a lot of sadness and regrets. The biggest one, the fracking took time away from my loved ones. I can't even say this. My grief is really deep. There have been so many betrayals. I cannot believe some days how I keep going. I will end with this. I will keep going. Every day I tell myself 1,000 times a day, keep going, just keep going, you keep going, you keep going. Confidentiality agreements to settle drinking water contamination by the petroleum industry. They're wrong. Water moves. You can seal the court documents. You can seal the multi-million-dollar agreements. You cannot stop the water from moving. Water will never stop moving. It's just getting more and more contaminated. Will I sign one of these and seal the Rosebud data?
Boy, does this get harder and harder to follow. That comes from the heart. Just want to remind you that we have a donation box for Jessica up at the front on your way out to help with her lawsuit, because it does affect all of us. So please help.
The hamlet of Rosebud is just down in the valley there where you see the coulee slope of the trees facing north. My water well is directly there. The hamlet's about a couple kilometers away. My water well is directly south of this compressor. When Encana first started doing this development here and didn't tell us about it, this compressor had zero attenuation on it. The noise at my place was unbearable. I'd like to know what's in these tanks. Are they starting to produce more and more fresh water from their dry coal bed methane? Is there methanol in there? There we have the Rosebud water wells are up on the horizon over there. We have another tank over there. Then you see that straw bale wall and 2 more compressors and more tanks. That compressor to the east had 0 attenuation, and that was an unbelievably noisy thing. In the beginning of these compressors, it was like a jet engine taking off 24 hours, 7 days a week. And Canada promised us in a public meeting that there would never be more than 2 compressors in a row here, because that's one of the big problems in American CBM fields. If you look straight across towards the horizon, you'll see a radio tower, and just to the west and the slope of that, Encana has, at the last time I was there were 6 compressors in a row there, so they broke their promise. There are more compressors on the horizon. There's a number of wells and tanks straight through to the south across the river. In the map that I made showing that Encana did about more than 190 wells fracked really shallow above the basic groundwater protection within about 6 miles of my water well. There were also a number of wells, about 60, that were fracked less than 200 meters below the surface. That's incredibly shallow, especially when you think that most of our water wells are down in the valley. And the ones that were the most shallow were just across from my water well to the south. When you come down from the Hamlet water wells, a couple kilometers towards my water well, that's where they fracked the 5 of 14 with the contours of the coulee top to the water wells. They fracked at the most shallow into their most shallow perforation right into the drinking water at the top was at 121 meters below the surface. And Encana even has this data on the groundwater database, where they say that these were freshwater perforations into freshwater zones with the intention to fracture for coal bed methane. Let's see, there's 2 more compressors over here. One of them caused the community a lot of noise depending on how the wind was. That was a problem also. There's more compressors to the north. There was one on the top of the hill that I could hear at my place, and it had no attenuation either. An engineer, I work in the patch, some of my colleagues were aghast by what was happening here, and one of the engineers said to me, yeah, they're doing the cheapest engineering possible, so to keep the facilities cool in the summertime, this one up here was a good example. On a hot summer night when the noise drove you crazy, you'd go up there and all the windows and doors were wide open, and of course the noise would come blaring out. So having chosen to live rurally, to live in quiet, I don't have that anymore. After an incredible fight, took years, Encana finally put some attenuation. They were required to do an assessment before they put these compressors in to figure out what the noise would do and consult with us. They didn't. They never told me about this. And had their engineers done a proper noise assessment, I had a noise expert come and they would have seen that their noise was going to bounce off the coulee wall into the natural amphitheater on my land of the other side of the coulee, right into my home. Had they just moved those compressors back about a mile up to here, I probably wouldn't be living with this much noise. So they could have prevented this problem. The other thing they could have prevented is they could have consulted with us upfront and honest in the first place and put the attenuation on right away.
And, well, in fact, there is a woman in southern Alberta who's going to court over her well becoming contaminated. But what about this, Travis? This is something your industry is facing in other areas. It's one of the reasons that there's a ban in New York State and in Quebec right now. In northeastern British Columbia, is methane infiltrating wells this way?
Well, I appreciate the question from Joanne. I think that you go, even the piece in Rosebud, Alberta, that's been around for a long time, and there has been shown no connectivity to oil and gas activity. You look at even Alberta, we got 167,000 wells that have been fracked in this province, and there's been absolutely no tie to methane from fracking in drinking water.